Hello, and welcome to Oil for the Journey. My name is Tony, and I will be your journey reader for today. We're following the Bridges for Peace, Ignite the Truth Bible reading plan, and our reading for today will be from the book of 1 Samuel, chapters 5 through 8. Before we get started, I want to ask that the Spirit of God would come and saturate our hearts and our minds at this time. Lord, we ask you to open our spiritual as well as our natural eyes that we can see everything that you have for us at this time. And we ask it in the name of Jesus. Amen. With that, let's dive in. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation, 1 Samuel chapter 5. After the Philistines captured the Ark of God, they took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. They carried the Ark of God into the temple of Dagon and placed it beside an idol of Dagon. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, Dagon had fallen with his face to the ground in front of the Ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him in his place again. But the next morning, the same thing happened. Dagon had fallen face down before the Ark of the Lord again. This time, his head and hands broken off and were lying on the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. This is why, to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor anyone who enters the temple of Dagon in Ashdod would step on its threshold. Then the Lord's heavy hand struck the people of Ashdod and the nearby villages with a plague of tumors. When the people realized what was happening, they cried out, "We can't keep the Ark of God of Israel here any longer. He is against us. We will all be destroyed along with Dagon, our God." So they called together the rulers of the Philistine towns and asked, "What should we do with the Ark of the God of Israel?" The rulers discussed it and replied, "Move it to the town of Gath." So they moved the Ark of the God of Israel to Gath. But when the ark arrived at Gath, the Lord's heavy hand fell on its men, young and old. He struck them with a plague of tumors, and there was a great panic. So they sent the ark of the God to the town of Ekron. But when the people of Ekron saw it coming, they cried out, "They're bringing the ark of the God of Israel here too, to kill us." The people summoned the Philistine rulers again and begged them, "Please send the ark of the God of Israel back to its own country, or it will kill us all." For the deadly plague from God had already begun, and great fear was sweeping across the town. Those who didn't die were afflicted with tumors, and the cry from the town rose to heaven. Chapter 6. The ark of the Lord remained in Philistine territory 7 months in all. Then the Philistines called their priests and diviners and asked them, "What should we do about the ark of the Lord? Tell us how to return to its own country." "Send the ark of the God of Israel, back with a gift," they were told. "Send a guilt offering so the plague will stop. Then if you are healed, you will know it was his hand that caused the plague." "What sort of guilt offerings should we send?" they asked. And they were told, "Since the plague has struck both you and your 5 rulers, make 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, just like those that have ravaged your land. Make these things to show your honor to the God of Israel. Perhaps then he will stop afflicting you, your gods, and your land. Don't be stubborn and rebellious as Pharaoh and the Egyptians were. By the time God was finished with them, they were eager to let Israel go. Now build a new cart and find 2 cows that have just given birth to calves. Make sure the cows have never been yoked to a cart. Hitch the cows to the cart, but shut their calves away from them in a pen. Put the ark of the Lord on the cart, and beside it, place a chest containing the gold rats and the gold tumors you are sending as a guilt offering. Then let the cows go wherever they want. If they cross the borders of our land and go to Beth Shemesh, we will know it was the Lord who brought this great disaster upon us. If they don't, we will know it was not his hand that caused the plague. It was simply by chance." So these instructions were carried out. 2 cows were hitched to the cart, and the newborn calves were shut up in a pen. Then the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rats and gold tumors were placed on the cart. And sure enough, without veering off in other directions, the cows went straight along the road toward Beth-Shemesh, lowing as they went. The Philistine rulers followed them as far as the border of Beth-Shemesh. The people of Beth-Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley when they saw the ark, and they were overjoyed. The cart came into the field of a man named Joshua and stopped beside a large rock. So the people broke up the wood of the cart for a fire and killed the cows and sacrificed them to the Lord as a burnt offering. Several men of the tribe of Levi lifted the ark of the Lord and chests containing the golden rats and gold tumors from the cart, and placed them on the large rock. Many sacrifices and burnt offerings were offered to the Lord that day by the people of Beth-Shemesh. The 5 Philistine rulers watched all this and then returned to Ekron that same day. The 5 gold tumors sent by the Philistines as a guilt offering to the Lord were gifts from the rulers of Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The 5 gold rats represented the 5 Philistine towns and their surrounding villages, which were controlled by the 5 rulers. The large rock at Beth-Shemesh, where they set the ark of the Lord, still stands in the fields of Joshua as a witness to what happened there. But the Lord killed 70 men from Beth-Shemesh because they looked into the ark of the Lord. And the people mourned greatly because of what the Lord had done. Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? They cried. Where can we send the ark from here? So they sent messengers to the people at Kiriath-Jearim and told them, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come here and get it. Chapter 7. So the men of Kiriath-Jearim came to get the ark of the Lord. They took it to the hillside home of Abinadab and ordained Eleazar, his son, to be in charge of it. The ark remained in Kiriath-Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, Israel mourned because it seemed the Lord had abandoned them. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you want to return to the Lord with all your hearts, get rid of all your foreign gods and your images of Ashtoreth. Turn your hearts to the Lord and obey him alone, as he will rescue you from the Philistines. So the Israelites got rid of their images of Baal and Ashtoreth and worshiped only the Lord. Then Samuel told them, gather all of Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at Mizpah, and in a great ceremony drew water from a well and poured it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. It was at Mizpah that Samuel became Israel's judge. When the Philistine rulers heard that Israel had gathered at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Don't stop pleading with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines, they begged Samuel. So Samuel took a young lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. He pleaded with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered him. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived to attack Israel. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven that day, and the Philistines were thrown into such confusion that the Israelites defeated them. The men of Israel chased them from Mizpah to a place below Beth-kar, slaughtering them all the way. Samuel then took a large stone and placed it between the towns of Mizpah and Jeshanah. He named it Ebenezer, which means the stone of help. For he said, up to this point, the Lord has helped us. So the Philistines were subdued and didn't invade Israel again for some time. And throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's powerful hand was raised against the Philistines. The Israelite villages near Ekron and Gath that the Philistines had captured were restored to Israel, along with the rest of the territory that the Philistines had taken. And there was peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the rest of his life. Each year, he traveled around, setting up his court, first at Bethel, then at Gilgal, then at Mizpah. He judged the people of Israel at each of these places. Then he would return to his home at Ramah, and he would hear cases there too. And Samuel built an altar to the Lord at Ramah. Chapter 8. As Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel, Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons. They held court in Beersheba, but they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. Finally, all the elders of Israel met at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. Look, they told him, you are now old, and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations have. Samuel was displeased with their request and went to the Lord for guidance. Do everything they say to you, the Lord replied, for they are rejecting me, not you. They do not want me to be their king any longer. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, they have continually abandoned me and followed other gods. And now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but solemnly warn them about the way a king will reign over them. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before his chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army. Some will be forced to plow the fields and harvest his crop, and some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand 1/10 of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from his kings. You are the kings you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into battle. So Samuel repeated to the Lord what the people had said, and the Lord replied, do as they say and give them a king. Then Samuel agreed and sent the people home. Wow. So as I read that, it's like certain words just sort of stuck out to me. I remember when I was young and there were things that I wanted to do that my mother maybe said I shouldn't do them. And she would say no, but I would keep asking. And it wasn't like it was sin or anything like that, but she knew that there would be a better choice for me if I would just make it. But I insisted on having my way, and so she would say, go ahead. I've learned that go ahead doesn't always have something good behind it. God instructed those who are his to make him first in our lives, to love him more than anything else. We're instructed not to mix any of the practices of non-believers with our worship of the one true and living and all-powerful and all-knowing God. So my advice today, or at least what I get from it, is that if you ever knew God, but you've fallen away maybe in some ways, I heard the word return. Return. That's what Samuel said. Did you hear that word? And I want to say, if you never knew God, he wants you to know him. So if you want to know him and know the safety of his presence, now would be a great time to seek him. He said, if you seek him with all your heart, he will let you find him. God bless your day.